This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors in compliance with the Government in the Sunshine Act. I'm Walter Isaacson, and I declare this meeting in order. We have a quorum. We're meeting in Miami because we spent the morning going over the Office of Cuba Broadcasting and had a great opportunity to thank the people who work very well here, especially Carlos Garcia, the director, and all of his staff. The reason we're doing this is because our Strategy and Budget Committee is now looking not only at Cuba broadcasting, but Latin American broadcasting and the relationship between Latin American and Cuban broadcasting as we go through the Broadcast Board of Governors' current strategic review. And although we've held no formal meetings since December, the committees of the individual governors have been busy, especially the Strategy and Budget Committee as it relates to this. I also want to give a quick thank you to all the people in the Middle East broadcasting networks who have done an astonishingly good, courageous, and brave job in Cairo and in Libya and elsewhere. Al Hurra and many of our other stations have really come into their own. And I might even turn to Anders, who's been watching how well they've done, and just if you want to.
One watches as history unfolds to see who steps up and who matures, and it's absolutely clear that the Middle East Broadcasting Network and Al Hurra TV and Sawa Radio grabbed this crisis to put their mark on the world of global media. They saw an opportunity, they got their people positioned, they scooped much of the larger commercial global media time after time in Tunisia, in Cairo, and now in Libya, where it turns out they've got a fairly substantial audience. I think that we can say, Mr. Chairman, that this is the turning point for MBN, for Al Hurra TV in particular, and that they will henceforth, going forward, be one of the most important pieces of U.S. international
I just think it was spectacular what Al Hurra did, and we should all be proud of it. And I know the Secretary of State was on Al Hurra, and the coverage, every time we looked at the clips, other broadcasters and other news organizations were giving them the credit. I'm going to take the Chairman's prerogative to go out of order for a variety of reasons. And I'd like to go right to the Strategy and Budget Committee report and then the Governance Committee report, and then we'll work backwards through our agenda. Anders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report I'm going to give you is a quick update of where Strategy and Budget has been going in coordination with my co-chair, Michael Meehan, sitting directly opposite me. As you know, we have been engaged in a year-long strategic review. The idea behind a serious, deep dive strategic view is to try to understand what the broadcast universe is going to look like, not tomorrow or the day after, but 4 or 5 years out. What's going to be pushing those environments? What's going to drive them? Who are the key actors going to be? What kinds of dynamics and strategies are going to be at work on these landscapes? And the reason one wants to do this is because U.S. international broadcasting is a global enterprise where the pieces on its chessboard are moving on a daily basis. And it's necessary for us, one, to know how to plan effectively how to broadcast into areas that are in the process of rapid change, and secondly, how to direct the instruments that we have to do this in an effective and efficient way. So the review is ongoing. We launched it in September of 2010. With briefings from the National Security Council and the State Department. We have met with the heads of the broadcast desks of our different broadcast organizations to try to understand what these broadcast environments are going to look like more generally going forward. We've also had a meeting of a group to talk about distribution onto these broadcast landscapes. In January, we began a country-by-country, region-by-region review of BBG strategy, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about 2 areas that we have already completed or are in the final stages of being completed. First, Africa, and then Latin America. Each review examines BBG programming along with political and media factors that shape the broadcasting environments that we're looking at. Our intention has been, among other things, to get our broadcasters to come forward to us with suggestions for how to improve our broadcasting. As all of you know, all of you who have had contact or who work on a day-to-day basis with our broadcast desks, the people who operate them have a unique view, an on-the-ground unique view of what their environments require. And we have sought to engage them intensively and, as we like to say, to own their budget and to make concrete suggestions for how we go forward. We held the regional review for African broadcasting in January 13th, and the regional review for Latin American broadcasting in February. The board staff prepared detailed briefing books from these reviews, which are available. The staff has also prepared strategic maps, which looks at how U.S. foreign policy, the broadcast environment, and our national interests are connected in any particular region. It's a kind of a way of creating a wiring diagram with real connective tissue, stuff that really means something, as a way of being able to graphically and substantively look at precisely where we are trying to go. We will be following the Africa and Latin American reviews in March and April. It's an extremely intensive process. Requires a lot of work from everybody at the networks, everybody on the staff, and all the governors. We'll be doing South Asia. That's Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan on March 28th, the Balkans on March 30, the Caucasus on the 1st of April, Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova on April 4th, Russia, including Tatarstan and Bashkortostan, and the North Caucasus on April 6th, and Central Asia on April 11th. It's a very aggressive schedule. We are going to come out of this, we believe, with a much more synthetic, a much more comprehensive view of what our broadcast environment looks like, the dynamics that are at play on it, and a good sense of how to build strategy for allocating and implementing our resources effectively.
I'll maybe turn to Judith. If the coordination with the State Department has been quite good, and you mentioned some of that this morning.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we're determined to do, and the Secretary has spoken recently on the importance of international broadcasting, is to work very closely with the Broadcast Board of Governors to ensure that our initiatives and efforts in this important function of our component of our foreign diplomacy, engaging with foreign populations all over the world, are closely coordinated and reflect current realities in terms of foreign policy priorities, goals, and objectives.
I must say that the Secretary of State has been very outspoken on the need for international broadcasting and for us to compete in this arena. And you've done a lot of follow-up conversation. I really do appreciate what you've said and the fact that you've made it clear that how much importance is being placed on the great work that's being done by people at international broadcasting.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me just add one other thing. If I could ask the Board of Governors to adopt the committee's reports that I've just cited.
And that's the only motion that you have,
motion.
and it's all in our one of our tabs, right? And tab 2, and it can be done as one motion. So I'll have that be a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meehan. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Then it carries. The Governance Committee by
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Mohawk, Governor Mohawk. I have to figure out how to call people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on the discussions at the February 22nd meeting of the Governance Committee, the committee makes the following recommendations to the board. The committee recommends adoption by the plenary board of the November 18th, 2010 committee report, and I so move.
Second from Governor Ash. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you have it, sir.
Governance Committee terms of reference. The Governance Committee recommends amended terms of reference incorporating the following changes. include as new committee mandates: 1, oversight of the overall structure and use of human capital within BBG-funded United States international broadcasting, including without limitation issues of staff morale and management structures, and 2, oversight of the BBG's authority to accept gifts from outside sources. I move the adoption of the amended terms of reference of the Governance Committee.
Second. Any discussion?
I'd just point out, apparently, there's a legal issue that Paul and some of the legal counsels of the entities discussed in terms of accepting gifts. I know this being the 15th anniversary of Radio Free Asia, there's an interest in accepting gifts for the RFA to be able to carry out its commemoration of this particular anniversary and dealing with the legal issues that are involved in that.
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, that would actually be one of the things that the committee would consider as part of this broadened mandate.
Yeah.
The
I think we
motions-
should be very public on how we do that. I mean, if there's somebody who wants to be part of the celebration of Radio Free Asia and give something, I mean, it's good that it's being noted at this meeting, but that we'll have procedures for that and full discussion. And let me ask Jeff to make sure those who are watching this, if you want to see any of these documents we're referring to, they'll all be on the bbg.gov website.
This is not, Mr. Chairman, this is not a new policy. This is just amending terms of reference.
Right, no, but it's when you described it, if somebody said, what do you mean amending terms of reference, they can go to the website.
Correct.
I
That's
see
right.
all the documents that are in
Yes.
front of us now are totally public and totally available.
And let me say, Mr. Chairman, it's certainly in line with what the State Department does in many areas. For example, Secretary Clinton very appropriately helped raise money for the U.S. Pavilion in Shanghai, which is a considerable amount of money that Congress did not have to appropriate. Ambassadors at virtually every embassy in the world are authorized annually to solicit money for the 4th of July celebrations, which they do in the country to which they're accredited. And so what we're discussing here is certainly in line with past precedent that is being used at the Department of State.
Absolutely, and I just want to make sure everyone knows they can see every one of these documents and the emendations so that it's nothing's being done.
And I would agree, any
openly and
donations
clear.
made should be available for anyone to review and to look at.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. Modifications to existing firewall policy. The committee proposes a strengthened firewall policy based on the provisions of the United States International Broadcasting Act of 1994 as amended to clarify that the independence of BBG journalists is to be protected not only from the undue influence of other executive branch agencies, but also from intervention by individual governors, the Secretary of State, and the Inspector General. The committee recommends board adoption of the revised firewall policy, which is included in attachment 3 of the committee report, and I so move.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion of that.
Let me just say, just so no one gets the wrong impression, this Secretary of State has not ever interfered or
Oh, yeah, no,
attempted
this
to
isn't
interfere.
directed
I'm not,
at
we're
you.
not
Yeah,
suggesting
yeah.
that, but if someone listening in at the wrong moment got that impression, that is not correct.
Right.
Okay. Modifications to existing crisis management policy. The committee recommends that BBG staff.
Let me, by the way, just take a quick vote, which is
Oh, I'm
all in
sorry.
favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, sorry, Dennis.
Modifications to existing, got ahead of myself, to existing crisis management policy. Committee recommends that BBG staff be directed to develop and propose a revised crisis management policy based on the definition of crisis that is comprised of a physical threat to a journalist or to the destruction of BBG facilities. Secondly, we recommend development of a separate crisis plan to cover foreign policy crises, that is, events which may require a surge in BBG broadcasting. The staff should be directed to develop revised protocols based upon these proposed recommendations. That's information, there's no move, there's no action required.
Although we certainly saw the importance of that in the past few weeks, as we
Right.
did so well surging our broadcast capabilities in the Middle East.
The rest of the matters, Mr. Chairman, are announcements in the form of announcements, individual governor contributions to board and committee meeting agendas. In order to comply with the public notice requirements of the government in the Sunshine Act, individual governors are encouraged to raise agenda items and resolutions for discussion at least 7 days prior to a meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, except in urgent circumstances. Protection of confidential information exchanged during board deliberations. The committee believes there is a need to develop a confidentiality policy for sensitive but unclassified information within the federal agency. The BBG staff should develop and recommend to the committee ways to protect sensitive but unclassified information from disclosure consistent with federal law and regulation and precedents established by other federal agencies. Functions and authorities of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the International Broadcasting Bureau, Voice of America, and Office of Cuban Broadcasting. The Governance Committee notes that a lack of clarity exists in the day-to-day management of the agency regarding the respective functions and responsibilities of the board, the BBG Executive Director, and respective directors of the International Broadcasting Bureau, Voice of America, and Office of Cuban Broadcasting. This lack of clarity is, to a large extent, inherent in the BBG statute. Under the agency's statute and the board's existing delegations of authority, the day-to-day operations of key agency functions have been invested in the IBB Director. The functions of the IBB Director within the federal agency were clarified in a functional authorities chart adopted by the board at its December 2010 meeting, which is attached and will be available on the website.
Great.
In order to properly execute the International Broadcasting Bureau functions as managers of key functions of the federal agency, managers of the BBG's Global Distribution Network, and chair of the IBB Coordinating Committee, the IBB Director must have the authority to evaluate, identify, and resolve strategic trade-offs and conflicts among the broadcasting entities, consisting with the broad strategic guidelines established by the board and subject to the board's continuing oversight. The Governance Committee recommends that the board should clarify that the Voice of America and Office of Cuban Broadcasting Directors report to the International Broadcasting Bureau Director with respect to these key day-to-day operational functions, and report to the board only with respect to their respective content and programming.
That takes a motion, right?
This is recommending clarification.
Paul, does that take a motion?
Yes, I believe it does.
And
I'm
are
sorry,
you so moving it?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And Dick, we want to, it falls into your purview, but it gives me a chance to say how wonderful it's been having you aboard. And since you were once involved with the Office of Cuba Broadcasting in a previous century, is that correct? Yeah, it's good to have you back.
Previous millennium.
Previous millennium. It was good to have you back here, but this does clarify your authority, and you've done a great job, and thank you.
Thank you, and again, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask for a raise.
Okay.
Take that under advisement.
In the year 2015, when the budgeting process is stabilized, we will not do raises even then.
Okay, just a couple more matters, Mr. Chairman.
Can I, before we vote on this,
Yeah.
item I suggests harmonization of grantee bylaws, which you mentioned, I think.
Yes.
Will the legal counsel, Mr. Comer, be passing this on to the three entities? I mean,
Were you going to cover that?
it says recommend. How are we going to get
Yeah.
it to them, and how will we check to see if they've taken our suggestion to heart or ignored it?
Well, I had omitted that from this. We are going to continue to work with the agencies to harmonize bylaws. But in the interest of time, I didn't think we needed to take the time
Okay,
to
so
do
this
that.
is off the agenda.
It's off the agenda.
Do I hear a vote? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay.
Carried.
Delegations of authorities to the BBG Executive Director, IBB Director, VOA Director, and OCB Director. The BBG staff is directed to develop and submit to the Governance Committee for further consideration revised delegations of authority to the BBG Executive Director, IBB Director, Voice of America Director, and Office of Cuban Broadcasting Director to clarify the responsibilities of each position and ensure the proper delegation of functions across the four positions. Each delegation of authority should specify the nature and extent of the functions for which each respective director is responsible. The reporting relationships for each respective director, and where applicable, the functions with respect to which each director may be subordinate to another director. And last but not least, interaction with non-U.S. international broadcasting entities. And this is, again, an announcement. The committee this will require action, I'm sorry. Agreements and relationships with other international broadcasting entities and governments. The committee recommends that the board should designate the BBG Executive Director as a principal point of contact and the chief representative of the Broadcasting Board of Governors in relationships with other international broadcasting entities and governments, including such informal groups as the Directors General 5 Group. The board may delegate this authority to other members of the federal agency, including but not limited to the IBB Director and the VOA Director, to provide representation at various conferences and events. Importantly, the BBG Executive Director's representational authority is not intended to curtail the IBB Director's authority to conduct discussions regarding commercial and intergovernmental relationships necessary to distribute BBG programming globally. The International Broadcasting Bureau maintains many such international relationships to build and maintain facilities, develop affiliate relations, and distribute BBG programming around the world. These relationships could continue to be managed under the supervision of the IBB Director, and I so move this.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by David Carino. All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Nope.
That
Done.
concludes the Governance
Great.
Committee report.
I'd love to have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the December 17th meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They're so adopted. Under tab 11, and also on the website for anybody who wants to read it, we have two updated policy statements on sexual harassment and equal employment opportunity. The first confirms the board's clear and ongoing commitment to a workplace that is free of sexual harassment. It states clearly that managers and supervisors will be held responsible for ensuring that the workplace is free from sexual harassment and that appropriate action is taken when there are any allegations of sexual harassment brought to their attention. Is there any comment on these? Do I hear a motion to do it? So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Governor Ash. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The second resolution confirms the board's commitment to equal employment, equal opportunity employment. The BBG is strongly committed to identifying and eliminating any discriminatory practices and promoting the full realization of equal opportunity. That too is both on the website and tab 11. I think the updating is very important. It also gives us a chance to reaffirm such commitments. Do I hear a motion? Okay, so moved. Seconded? Seconded. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Nope. You want me to do this one too? Is that, yeah, okay. This is condemning interference with BBG broadcasts. And let me just preface this by saying it's sort of a compliment and a praise of all that we've been doing that suddenly we're getting shut down in other places and being interfered with in the Middle East. And a lot of work has been apparently done by certain governments under stress to try to block or censor the BBG broadcasts, especially Al Hurra and which other ones? PNN,
The
obviously.
broadcast to Iran by Radio Free Europe and Voice of America,
Right.
first and
Well,
foremost, and on an ongoing basis, broadcasting to places such as China, which continue to jam shortwave relentlessly and block access to internet sites. Dick, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, might have
Sure.
a word or two to add on this.
On my report, Mr. Chairman, I'll go into some of these issues.
Yeah, why don't you actually mention it right now so that we can then vote on the resolution and take it out of your
Well,
report?
let me give you some of the most recent examples. On Monday, February 21st, there was an external vendor of ours who's responsible for domain name services for the Voice of America. They were subjected to a so-called cyber attack, and visitors to the VOA websites were redirected to another site claiming to be the Iranian cyber army. We corrected the problem and got our situation corrected well within 1 or 2 days, and I want to make sure that everyone understands this was not a breach of our system and our servers, and no data was compromised or taken in this attack.
It is, by the way, you know, a new thing that a lot of the jamming and censorship and redirection is done by cyber attacks and hacking and trying to hack and redirect our internet content. So,
And isn't it true that the Iranian entity took credit for this in public in the press
Right.
release for doing
Yes.
so?
Yes, they did. In the previous week, Radio Farda faced a variation of a denial of service attack on its phone lines with a flood of automated robocalls attempting to clog the answering machines of that radio station of ours and not letting the audience make.
and was
their-
that from Iran as well?
Well, there was an automated voice in there claiming to be an alleged Hezbollah leader from Lebanon that was doing that. That was corrected pretty quickly. We've also encountered, as you mentioned, increased satellite jamming of our PNN and Al-Hura services in the Middle East. That started just recently and increased as the Middle East situation got hotter. And that's still ongoing. It's intermittent, but it's problematic.
And the board has in front of it a resolution that affirms its core principle that every individual is entitled to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas to any media, regardless of the frontiers. This is a very old declaration. It's been enshrined in Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights, but it's also new. Every time a new technology is developed, there are new firewalls and new ways to try to circumvent those firewalls, and I appreciate that we're on the forefront of all that. This resolution just reaffirms the right to receive and communicate ideas, that's under siege with the various attempts of governments to interfere with BBG broadcasts or BBG networks, or to threaten our journalists. Is there any further comment on that? Do I hear the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Vicky. Seconded, Dana. Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Then it carries. Governor Mulhaupt, do you want to do a resolution for Jeff Gedman?
Oh, sure. Yes.
If you don't, never mind, go ahead.
A resolution for Jeffrey, no, I do. A resolution for Jeffrey Gedman honoring his service
I second the motion.
is included in tab 12.
I would like to amend the motion to further, which I have here to be resolved, that the BBG board commends Governor Dennis Mulhaupt, who serves as chair of Radio Free Europe, for his leadership in managing the transition of leadership at RFE, and wishes him well as the process proceeds, and we confirm our confidence in him. I move that as an amendment to the resolution.
That's seconded by Susan, and thank you, Dennis. It's been a process, and you're overseeing a process in which many people have come forth to be possible successors at Radio Free Europe, and I know we discussed that at length yesterday, but we also appreciate the fact that you've been open in running that process, and we appreciate the various people that you've tapped to help you in that transition. So with the,
I think we have
I
to
don't
vote
know if
on
we
the
have to have a
amendment
second
first.
on the amendment, and then, okay. Is there a second to the amendment? Yes, there is. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And then all in favor of the motion, please
As
say aye.
amended.
As amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then it's done. All right, let's, before we get to the other resolutions, many of which we have, I want to make sure that we get Mary Jean on the budget update. There you are. Did you? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mary Jean Bueller, for those who don't know her last name.
As you know, we've been in several CRs, continuing resolutions, since October 1st. The most recent expires on March 18th. Reports are that we'll be in another short-term extension, probably for another 2 to 4 weeks, potentially, and we'll see where that goes. But all reports are that we will be in another short-term continuing resolution. As we were reviewing our continuing resolution procedures, we recognized that our shutdown plans had not been updated since 1995. And as such, we've been working with the administration on our shutdown plans and to ensure that they are current, and we're continuing that process, and things are going well. On to fiscal year 12, the budget was submitted to Congress for approximately $757 million. That's 2.5% increase over our FY10 levels, and $1 million less than our official fiscal year 11 request. The budget book is on the website, the BBG website, and I believe all governors should have gotten the hard copy of the budget in your packets earlier this week.
This is it right here, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and anybody who wants it can find it on the website.
Absolutely.
Which is good. Well, thank you. And by the way, I know that the budgeting process is enormously time-consuming. I know it's also time-consuming to do it with a democracy upheaval throughout the region, in which we actually want to be able to shift money legally and properly to the surge that we're doing in the Middle East. I know that then to add the other degree of difficulty, which is the possibility of a government shutdown occurring every couple of weeks, the fact that Jeff Trimble and yourself, and you may want to mention some of the others, seem to have been there every weekend, sending emails on Saturday and Sunday with new plans in case there had to be a government shutdown. I just want to thank you on behalf of all the board for spending your weekends doing things that probably aren't the most pleasant jobs, which is planning for shutdowns of various entities.
Dick Lobo and his staff have
Oh,
been heavily involved
Yeah, the
in
IBB
this
has
as
been
well,
making a lot
and
of those
Paul on
plans
behalf of the
with
agency.
the CFO's office, and we're prepared for whatever eventuality.
Right. Thank you. And Paul, too. I didn't mean
Yes,
to
we did.
leave anybody out.
Closely with the legal staff as well.
Yeah.
Legal staff, IBB, VOA, the entire organization. So it's been a very collaborative process.
Great. Anybody else want to have any further things they want to raise, and then we'll get to the resolutions that we have to do? Great. Sorry, I'm just keeping everybody on their toes by jumping around on this. There are two resolutions that Governor Ash, I think, wants to submit that are tab 13 and 14.
Mr.
Or
Chairman,
three,
just
actually.
as means of explanation, I haven't visited all the language services of VOA, but I think I've been to all but about 7. And I've uniformly been impressed by the passion, the commitment, and the dedication of the men and women who work in each of the language services. This is almost a calling more than a job for many of them. And I think it's appropriate when there's a 20th, 25th, or 30th, or in some cases perhaps 50th anniversary, that we should commemorate it by resolution of the board. Doesn't take a great deal of time, but it's an appropriate thing to give to the entities involved, and I'm sure Mr. Trimble at an appropriate time will have a plaque and make an appropriate presentation. I hope after today that if you'll just let us know when significant anniversaries are occurring, then we can just almost routinely deal with these and salute them. But certainly the silver anniversary of the VOA Creole service is one that has rendered incredible service after the earthquake in Haiti. They were really the means of communication for the nation of Haiti because the local stations basically had ceased to exist. They played a role in family reunification where that was possible. And it's just been incredible in terms of what they do. So I move the adoption of the resolution saluting the VOA Creole service for 25 years of service, not only to the American
we have
people,
a
but the
second?
people of Haiti and others.
And all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. And same with the Tibetan service, right?
Likewise, I'll tell you, visiting the Tibetan service was really inspirational to see all of whom, with maybe one exception, were born in Tibet, have emigrated to the United States, are truly passionate, just inspiring. They even have a map of the city of Lhasa before the Dalai
We
Lama
enjoyed
was,
seeing it, seeing
fleeing.
that picture there.
What?
Yeah, we enjoyed being with you, watching them too.
And then also with today's Lhasa, which has been substantially modified by the arrival of many non-Tibetans into that area and has totally changed the city that these men and women grew up in and were born in.
Do I have a sorry?
Well, I was just leading up to making the motion,
Okay,
Mr.
great.
Chairman, that we commend and congratulate the VOA Tibetan service on its 20 years of dedicated service.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. And finally, you have one for RFA.
We have previously voted on this with
Okay.
the RFA corporate board. It seemed appropriate that in the spirit of cooperation and close communication that should exist between our entities and the BBG board, that we do a similar resolution here, and I move its adoption.
Libby, Libby Liu is the president of Radio Free Asia, and I think you're on the phone with us. Is that right, Libby? Wrong.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Libby.
Okay, yeah. And I would like to take a moment to thank the BBG, the IBB, our fellow entities and outside supporters for the 15 years of impact. We're bracing ourselves for continuing this good work with increasingly repressive regimes, but we very much appreciate the recognition because, as Governor Ash remarked, the commitment of the people that work at RFA is simply perfect.
And your commitment too, Libby. Thank you very much for all you've been doing. All in, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. And then finally, since we're moving along quite well, it gives you time to get us into substance. Now that you've told us where we've been censored, you can help tell us the IBB director, Dick Lobo, will give a report on his activities.
Well, just another couple of brief items, Mr. Chairman. Buenos dias. As you know, last October, the OMB approved the transfer of $1.5 million of Internet circumvention funding from the Department of State to the BBG. And by November, the IBB had obligated just over $1 million of these funds. And last month, we obligated all but $60,000 of this money. So it's hard at work right now, and we're delighted to be working on that project.
And how was that allocation done? An open process of RFPs?
Indeed. We have specialists in the agency that deal with that issue on a day-to-day basis, and they conducted very extensive research into the best entities that are involved in developing tools for that circumvention. And then after a grueling procurement and contract process, these awards were let out.
Yeah, I'm saying this obviously since there's been so many newspaper reports in the past week on it, and it's Ken Berman's group, and we should commend them as well.
They've done a terrific job.
There's been a lot of, storm and drang over it, but in a steady way, they've been getting the RFPs, allocating this money, and I know that you've been working with the State Department and others.
Indeed.
Because there's really no need for a controversy over this. This is something we all have the same mission.
Exactly. And we've heard that these entities that are receiving these funds are having great success in getting through the firewall right now.
Well, especially I noticed in with the spike in traffic when the Libyan news started to break around the world, up to 40,000, in an hour using the circumvention technologies in various places, and that is exactly this day and age's counterpart to what was done when Radio Free Europe was breaking down the censorship in the Cold War.
Also interesting, during the Egyptian situation, they closed down the internet for a day or so, and that riled up the protesters and the dissenters even more, and they came out in larger numbers to protest that.
Well, someday somebody will figure out the discussions that's being held on to what extent this is a Facebook and internet revolution and to what extent it isn't. But we're there in the forefront, making sure that people who do want access to their Facebook accounts or to any other sources of information.
And the taxpayers should be happy to know that our agency is at the forefront, on the cutting edge of getting those new technologies up and running.
No, you've done a great job, and so has Ken. Let's give Ken Berman credit, too. Go on.
Yeah, on February 24th, an employee town hall meeting was held at our headquarters for the Voice of America and OCB staffs. The preponderance of the questions raised by the employees at that town hall meeting had to do with a proposed fiscal year 12 budget regarding shortwave service into China by the VOA. Other employees did not get a chance to ask questions, but they were invited to do so via the web, and we have answered those other questions as well. And incidentally, the next meeting of the International Broadcasting Bureau's Coordinating Committee is scheduled for late April, and the agenda is going to be involving exploring the content management systems and our new media activities at the agency, and we're really excited about that meeting. And finally, as you heard...
And that's going to be in the auditorium in the Cohen Building?
Well, no, not the IBB Coordinating Committee. The town hall meeting was in the Cohen Building, but the IBB Coordinating Committee will be in the conference room of the BBG.
But that'd be good.
Yeah. And as you heard, the staff of the IBB has been working very hard with the CFO's office and everyone at the agency preparing for a potential shutdown, and very hard work.
Bye-bye, Libby. Great. Well, thank you very much. Susan, I'm going to turn to you for a second, just because when you were talking about the town hall meeting and the coordination of new media, you helped coordinate something on Capitol Hill that was particularly good about the new media enterprise.
Yeah, we had a day-long exploration on Capitol Hill of all sorts of connection technologies and how we can take advantage of those to advance our mission with respect to and complementary to traditional forms of media. But as Director Lobo said, we are, as a board, truly committed to utilizing all the tools available, including new technologies, to move our mission forward. So we're all very excited about that, too.
project you showed too, the Africa?
We'll be debuting that soon, Global Voices. This will just be particular technology that will apply to a region of Africa. I don't think we want to go into too much detail
No, but
right
I mean,
now.
it's us looking into the social media aspect as well, I wanted to say. This is not just a broadcast thing.
Absolutely.
But a social network type
Right,
thing.
what we're trying to do is take the connection technologies toward engagement. So we are an agency that's about informing and engaging with people on the ground, and that's what we're exploring.
Yeah, and Susan's also been able to bring in a lot of experts from various private sector groups, and we appreciate them coming as well. But at some point, you're even going to bring in advisory council type members, we hope, and
That's our
keep us
hope.
in the forefront.
And we really want to engage with the greatest minds and talent out there in this area, and we're working toward that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add, I know last fall, in terms of town hall meetings, this is what I thought, the board met for, I think, the first time perhaps in board history, with employees of BBG in the auditorium there in the Cohen Building. And I think it'd be a good idea, particularly this summer, but about once a year, to consider doing that on a regular basis. And I just throw that out.
Yeah, it's
certainly
actually
was
what I
good
was thinking-
feedback.
I was actually thinking about that when I was thinking of the town hall meeting, and then you said the IBB coordinating council was going to meet. It'd be nice to have a town hall meeting in the Cone Building where people could show us, the governors, what's being done in connective and network and new media technology, and then we could answer questions, but even better, we could ask some questions so that we could learn about what's going on. Any further comments and thoughts? We have a trip report, which I appreciate, from Victor Ash, which is in front of us, and it's all very good, so we appreciate that.
Let me just add a couple of words, if I
Oh,
could,
okay,
on that.
sure.
First of all, I'd request, Mr. Comer, that this be placed on the website and be made part of the minutes. And each of the board members has a copy, but I want it to be fully there. It was an excellent trip. 2 recommendations in the back that are being carried forward, and at the next RFA board meeting, we will have a resolution incorporating it as permanent board policy. But first of all, there should be a policy in place where the new ambassador at each of the countries from which RFA, or for that matter VOA, has an office, but right now I'm dealing only with RFA, should be invited to visit the RFA offices in the Phnom Penh or Hong Kong or wherever it may be. I'm glad to say the Consul General in Hong Kong, Mr. Stephen Young, has already been at our invitation to the RFA office. But what I found was that, frankly, the ambassadors had almost never been there for lack of an invitation, and I think this is in the process of being corrected, and it should be, or the chargé, if that be the case. Secondly, where incidents have occurred that either involve attacks on property or on persons, as had occurred in Phnom Penh, what we found was the PAO office had been notified, but in some cases the chief of mission simply didn't even know about it, or indicated they didn't. Secondly, the head of the VAO office in the same city, less than a mile away, was never informed or knew about it. So clearly there was an absence of communication. Again, we're moving to correct that, but there should be regular communication, particularly if you're in the same city in a foreign nation, between the VAO office and the RFA office, because if there's a threat on one, the motive, and if it's a planned threat as opposed to just a night out or an incident, then the motivation could well apply to both as opposed to one, and that needs to be dealt with, and again, we're moving that direction. Finally, I'd just like to say, and I'm speaking only for myself, and I have talked briefly with Mr. Trimble, but I think the board needs to look seriously at where we do have multiple offices at the same capital, that is VOA or an RFE or an RFA office, as to why they could not be in the same facility. To have 2 offices less than a mile apart, paying different rents, why there could not be consolidation. It seems to me that would save money, and at the time when the Congress is looking at reducing our appropriations, I think we need to also be doing everything we can internally to save money where we can.
Well, absolutely, and I think those should be looked at very much on a cost-saving basis.
I must say there will be resistance by some, who frankly don't favor that, who work for the organizations, and I think this will be a case where the board will have to consider both points of view, but it will not be a trouble-free expedition if the board decides to mandate its implementation.
All right. Any other business or further comments for this meeting? If not, I'll just solicit the input regarding topics that might be addressed at our next meeting, which will be at the headquarters of Radio Free Asia in April in
April
Washington, April 14th to be specific. Carlos, gracias. Thank you for hosting us at
Thank
the
you for
Office
coming
of
down.
Cuban Broadcasting. And with that, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thanks.
Catch a plane.